There is yet another new Souls-like in town at the end of this month in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, and although I do think that the Souls-like genre, hell even the term Souls-like, is often overused or overdone, but I'm not going to lie to you guys, this one genuinely looks like it is going to be something very, very exciting, and almost every single preview that I've read on the game so far has only had positive things to say about this game. Now, for those of you who maybe just haven't heard anything at all about Wuchang Fallen Feathers, this game is launching later this month on July 24th, and it's going to be coming to PC, PS5, and on the Xbox Series consoles. So you can pretty much play this everywhere, and if you are into Souls-likes, then this one might be right up your alley. Now, Wuchang Fallen Feathers is developed by Lean Z, and it is published by 505 Games. Now, 505 are relatively well known as a publisher, but as for Lean Z, the actual developers of the game, they are essentially an unheard of entity within the gaming industry. Now, what we do know about Lean Z is that they are a Chinese developer established in 2016 and have seemingly only worked on VR games in the past. So this is obviously quite a big change up compared to a typical VR game. And while that does obviously come with some concerns, considering this is essentially their first foray into this type of game, it does actually remind me quite a lot of Black Myth Wukong and their developer Game Science, because that whole situation was pretty much identical to this one. And although there was also a lot of speculation and concern around Black Myth Wukong, I think most people would agree that whether you loved it or not, that game ended up doing pretty damn well, and it was essentially exactly what it looked like through all of the trailers and stuff like that. Now, for more context on Black Myth Wukong, like I said, their developer in Game Science, they are another Chinese dev studio that were founded in 2014, so again, it's not that different than Lean Z. And prior to Black Myth Wukong, they had only worked on mobile games, with that being their first entry into that more sort of AAA PC and console market. And like I said, they did do pretty damn well with that game, selling crazy numbers. I think it sold over 20 million copies. It broke a few records on Steam at one point, and although a lot of people were, like I said, suspicious that the game would actually turn out as good as it looked, it very much did. And so obviously that doesn't mean that this game is going to be the same. It is a different developer, but I think for me, my concerns about them being a pretty new studio and having only worked on VR games, the whole Black Myth Wukong thing kind of kills that, because we've seen that work in the past. Now, for a bit more context on the game itself, ironically, speaking of Black Myth Wukong, this game actually kind of looks like it is a mix of Black Myth Wukong as well as another very talked about game in Stellar Blade. Now, the setting and the overall vibe of Black Myth Wukong very much matches what they're going for in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, but it has the overly attractive aesthetic of the main character that does remind me a lot of Stellar Blade. But with Stellar Blade, despite what that game looks like at first glance, where it just looks like it is a simp simulator essentially, that game did genuinely have some of the most enjoyable combat that I've ever played, honestly. I never got around to actually finishing the game because there was so many games coming out at the time, but I genuinely got addicted to the gameplay. And so say what you will about Stellar Blade and its aesthetic, but I genuinely do think that was a really solid game. And so that combination of Black Myth Wukong and Stellar Blade, it genuinely feels like those two games just had a baby, with that game being Wuchang Fallen Feathers. So personally, I could not be more excited for this game. I really enjoyed both of those games. I think that sort of ancient mythical Chinese setting is really great for these sort of games, and honestly, a mix of those two games actually sounds like a perfect match in my opinion. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are new to the channel and you are interested in more Wuchang Fallen Feathers content in the lead up to launch, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more content on the way, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, like I said, I've read a lot of previews and even watched a few video previews as well, and essentially all of them are saying very positive things about the game. It is another Souls-like, yes, and that is a genre, and like I said, even a term that has become maybe a little bit overdone in the last 5 or so years, but this one does seem like it is one that can hold its own, and it does also offer some very nice, unique elements that not all of the other Souls-likes can offer. Now, first and foremost, the setting of the game is really, really cool from what we know so far. There is essentially a plague known as the Feathering Disease running rampant around ancient China, and this essentially drives its victims insane and gradually transforms them into pretty much bird-like creatures, which is where the term Fallen Feathers comes in. Now, the main character, the character that we play as, is called Bai Wuchang, and she's infected with this disease, but she also suffers with amnesia, and from my understanding that essentially delays the disease from driving her insane because of her pretty much her lack of memory. And so instead, she is really only granted with the positive side of the disease, which is the magical abilities that it gives her and those who are infected as well. The game is set in the lands of Shu during the Ming Dynasty, so it is very heavily inspired and based on Chinese culture and ancient Chinese culture, much the same as, again, Black Myth: Wukong, albeit obviously a very different setting and storyline. Now, the biggest draw to most Souls-likes out there, and really just any game like this, is the combat. That's something that we all thoroughly enjoy. A good combat system essentially makes or breaks any game like this, and I've got to say the combat in this game looks very, very exciting, and to me it does look a little bit more fleshed out than most other Souls-likes out there. Not all of them, but definitely most that I've seen over the last few years. Something that is really exciting to hear is that Wu Chang as a character has access to roughly 25 different weapons that are spread across 5 different weapon types. So it seems like there is going to be plenty of stuff to not only upgrade and chop and change between, but also a lot of stuff to go out and find. That is something that I love in games like this, is going around and exploring and actually trying to find the best weapons in the game and stuff like that. So the fact that there are 25 different weapons that are playable, that is very exciting to me, and there is no doubt going to be different upgrades and stuff for the majority, if not all 25 of those weapons. Now, something else that's exciting in terms of the combat is that she also, like I said, has access to magical abilities due to that feathering disease. And so there will not only be regular weapons in terms of like swords, axes, spears, and stuff like that. There is going to be magic in the game as well, both in the form of attacks as well as even stuff like being able to heal yourself, different ward abilities and stuff like that. So again, it does seem a little bit more fleshed out than a lot of other games out there. Again, speaking of Black Myth: Wukong, although I did really like that game, the combat wasn't that deep at the end of the day. Hell, it didn't even really have a parry. And so although there are plenty of similarities, the combat in this game does look a little bit more fleshed out than a game like Black Myth: Wukong. Now, something else that looks awesome in this game, and it is a big draw for me, is the variety of enemy types as well as the overall boss variety too. It looks very much like a proper Souls-like with the weird and wacky bosses that we've already seen throughout all the marketing and stuff. Some of these not only look really cool and really interesting, but they also do look very difficult as well. But obviously for any game like this, the bosses are one of the most crucial elements, and they are arguably kind of the main point of playing Souls-likes, is getting into those really difficult boss fights and trying to progress through the game. So on that side of things, it all looks very, very promising from what we've seen so far. Another cool touch as well when it comes to just the regular enemies that you'll find throughout the world is that in a lot of games, to me anyway, it doesn't make sense when enemies just kind of randomly attack you. When you're playing in a world and there are essentially no regular civilians, there's just only enemies and they're just wandering around doing nothing, and then they see you and they attack you, it often kind of makes the world feel not lived in and obviously very fake. But the thing is that in this game, it actually does make a lot of sense as to why pretty much everyone just attacks you, because they are actually attacking you due to your illness. Everyone pretty much wants to kill you on sight just so that they don't get infected with the disease. And so although that's not a big thing, that is something that makes a lot more sense to me, rather than just being a regular person walking around and for some reason everyone just wants to kill you. Overall though, I am very excited for this game, and you can expect a hell of a lot of content on the channel in the lead up to this game. I've already got about 9 or 10 other videos planned, and that is just in the lead up to launch, and I'll be doing plenty of guides and maybe even a full review once the game launches as well. And so if this game does look interesting to you guys, like I mentioned, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on all of the upcoming content. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.